Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here and back with more Final Fantasy 16 videos. When they said they were going to be posting interviews, they really meant posting interviews because like 6 more popped up as soon as I posted the first video. So apologies in advance for flooding your subscription boxes, but hey, we want to talk about it. We got to talk about it. Now, originally I was going to combine some of the interviews into one video. However, IGN posted their interview in multiple little pieces and separate articles, and some of them actually have incredibly important things to talk about. But, you know, I figured let me just compile all 3 of IGN's articles. Maybe there'll even be a 4th one by the time this is done into one video. I mean, who would possibly post a bunch of different videos or articles on the same topic all at the same time? No one I could think of. Please watch my other videos on this. Anyway, we're going to start with the main one, the article that has the most Q&A, and then we're going to move into the separate ones which cover some important aspects about the game, including a tease at parties as well as the structure of the game's world. 2 things that we've been wondering a lot about. So with this first article from IGN, it starts with the fluff piece, the trailer, the dominance trailer, the icons. You know, speaking with IGN in a new interview, Yoshi-P provides some more insight into combat, summons, and other mechanics. Process of confirming that it will once again feature party mechanics in one form or another. We'll get into that a little bit later. We didn't want to overwhelm users on our newest trailer, so we focused solely on Clive's battles. That said, for most of his journey, Clive will be accompanied by 1 or more companions. These companions will participate in battle, as well as trade banter with Clive. That said, party members will be AI-driven so as to allow players to focus solely on controlling Clive. So, you will have allies, you will have a party, something a lot of people were concerned about, but your gameplay will be restricted to Clive himself. Now, given the structure of the game, I'm willing to bet that some of the dominants we've already seen will very likely be party members. I suspected this with Garuda in particular when we saw the previous trailer and we saw some of the gameplay elements in it. So I'm glad to see that that may actually be a prediction that I've gotten right. But they do have a separate article that talks about it a little bit more, or at least teases that they'll be going into it a little bit more. While Yoshi wouldn't confirm one way or another, one of those party members could include Torgal, the wolf-pup in the original trailer, which we'll talk about with the other article. Final Fantasy XVI's combat will translate summons into player actions. One way or another, it seems it will at least be similar to Final Fantasy 15, which also featured AI-controlled party members. Hey, 15 lets you control those party members now, and I gotta tell you, the game's a lot better for it, so just saying, it launched like that, but it's gotten better. This has been a trend in the series since it moved away from turn-based combat, with even Final Fantasy VII Remake embracing action-based combat. On that note, Final Fantasy VII Remake have been widely praised for balancing depth and nuance with speed and excitement. Yoshida says that 16 will play somewhat differently. 7 Remake would not exist without Final Fantasy VII, so those original systems influenced Remake. Final Fantasy 16, however, is a completely new game with a new concept. In order to take the series in a new direction, rather than build off the old battle systems, director Hiroshi Takai and battle director Ryota Suzuki made real-time actions their focus, translating traditional summon abilities into player actions and allowing for real-time swapping and chaining of these abilities in battle has allowed us to create a system that not only looks great, but feels really good to play. If you're looking into more details about exactly how that's going to work out and how it will differ from Final Fantasy 15, I did do a full gameplay breakdown of the Dominance trailer. And there's a lot of little tidbits that if you're used to playing some of Suzuki's other work, specifically Devil May Cry 5, then you'll definitely recognize a lot of little bits. Or if you've just played other non-hack and slash, more stylish action games, I suppose. Summons that featured heavily in Final Fantasy XVI's most recent trailer, replete with customary pyrotechnics that fans have come to expect from such sequences. Ifrit, Ramuh, Bahamut, Shiva, all of whom appear in the trailer, have been Final Fantasy mainstays for many years, and their importance has grown alongside the franchise's leap in fidelity. Got that giant quote, the IGN special 16 is... Oh, so this funny thing, this quote is actually a typo. It's pulled from something a little bit below, so we'll talk about it when we get there. This quote is almost used exactly in the Square Enix interview. They're akin to weapons of mass destruction. Icons appear in many different situations and iterations. There's no one design concept that covers all of them. Some will face Clive as fierce enemies. Some will be friends and come to Clive's aid. There'll also be times where the player will control an icon in real time, battling other icons. The battle type and scale are somewhat fluid and change seamlessly in real time depending on the battle, giving things at maximum excitement while maintaining immersion. These varied types of icon-driven, action-oriented battles are one of the main selling points of Final Fantasy 16. We're bringing you more to you in them in the coming months. Really excited about that. Final Fantasy 16 won't be a Final Fantasy theme park this time. So this is really just to remind people that yes, while they did originally work on Final Fantasy XIV, a lot of the developers, a lot of the people working on this, Yoshi-P himself being director and producer, that this is not Final Fantasy XIV as a single-player game. It is not a theme park. It is its own thing. The development concepts for 14 and 16 are inherently different. 16, so this is the typo. This is actually supposed to say Final Fantasy 14. You can tell just from the way it's worded. It says Final Fantasy 16 does something that no Final Fantasy before it has. Take aspects of the entire series and incorporate it into what we call a Final Fantasy theme park. They clearly meant to say 14 because that's not, they just specifically said 16 won't be that way. However, while that is a Final Fantasy 14 concept, it is not a specific business unit business unit 3 development team characteristic. A lot of big words slipping me up. Final Fantasy 16 will be its own entity, separate from Final Fantasy 14 and other games in the series, so you won't find as many tributes as you will in 14. That doesn't mean there won't be some Easter eggs. That said, 16's main focus will be maintaining the series-wide feel of playing a movie rather than drawing from past titles. Now, I know some people are going to say the playing a movie thing and think more of something like the recent Quarry or Until Dawn, or maybe go a little bit more like MGS4 or something of that capacity. But in the Square Enix interview, Yoshi-P said that when he was playing the original Final Fantasy 1, 30 years ago, he said that made him feel like he was playing as the lead in an epic motion picture. So that doesn't mean it's going to be all cutscenes and QTEs. That's just him translating that feeling from 3 decades ago and trying to recreate that in modern technology. So don't worry too much about that. But there are some other tidbits that we need to discuss with the other articles that IGN posted. Despite the differences, Square Enix has no doubt that Yoshida and the rest of the development team can carry over some magic from the MMO, which keeps growing with every new expansion. Now, like I said, IGN did not post just one article. They took little tidbits of this one and expanded upon them in other articles and even released some new information in those articles. The first one, Final Fantasy XVI's puppy has a name, and he may be a party member. A little bit of clickbait, but I get what they were going for with this one because they asked Yoshi-P a question. He neither confirmed nor denied. So in the gaming industry, that's a solid maybe right there. A noticeable element was a puppy barking as two of the game's major characters, Clive and Joshua, meet one another. Veterans of the series will recall that Final Fantasy has a long history with loyal dogs, so what's the deal with 16's extremely cute little pup? You know, he's right, actually. We should call him Angelo, just for the reference. Glad they went with something original. Speaking with IGN in a new interview, producer Yoshi-P I like how I don't even call him Naoki Yoshi, I just call him Yoshi-P, teased a bit more info about the franchise's newest canine. Well, let's just say he's more wolf than dog, and his name is Torgal. As for him being a party member, you'll just have to wait and see. We'll have more info on parties soon. So again, them reiterating the fact that while yes, you will be playing as Clive, you will have allies you are traveling with that participate in battle with you. Now, what's very interesting about this statement, more wolf than dog, when we see Torgal, he is just a puppy. He looks young, he looks non-threatening. And so him saying he's more wolf than dog must be speaking to Clive's adult life. Torgal will grow up when Clive does, assuming he survives the events, which we really hope Torgal does. Hence the reason why it seems like he's kind of hesitant to answer this. But Yoshi-P classically kind of deflects questions. He doesn't want to say no unless it's a real hard no. Even if the answer will eventually be no. He just likes to leave people hanging on the edge right there. It seems Torgal will definitely have a part to play in the story and possibly the gameplay as well. Whatever his role ends up being, Torgal will join a proud lineage, that of Umbra, Interceptor. Where's Angel? Wait a minute. Are you listen, I understand, Ryder, if you don't like Final Fantasy VIII. By the way, The Boys, new episodes on Friday. Interceptor, I love Interceptor. Darkstar, maybe not one I would have referenced off the top of my head, but yeah. But where's Angelo? Angelo's one of the best boys. I don't care how you feel about Final Fantasy VIII. Angelo's a good boy. I feel like this is disrespect. That's all I'm saying. According to Yoshida, 16's battle will feature one or more AI companions who will participate in battle with Clive. We'll see whether one of those AI companions ends up being Torgal. Anyway, that was the only detail from this one. The last one then covers the actual world. This actually has completely different information from the previous article, so this one's a little more valuable than the last one. When 16 was first revealed, many fans immediately assumed that it would follow in the footsteps of its predecessors and be a large-scale open-world RPG. According to producer Naoki Yoshida, though, that won't be the case. I'm one of the few people who was 50-50 on this. I was like, I don't know if it'll be open world. It doesn't really seem like the kind of game they would do open world. So they might do like they might do it kind of like the old school Final Fantasies. If for anyone who hasn't played the really old school ones, they're not really open world until the very end of the game. It's really more like you go to a section of the game. There's the main path you can go to continue the story, usually random encounters along the way, and then a couple of side quests, stuff that'll maybe you'll be like, oh, I'll come back to this later when I find an item. There's an NPC asking for something, or oh, I got to do a side quest while I was here. That's how I imagined it. And this doesn't really answer whether or not it'll be like that, but it does give us a better idea of what it'll be like. Yoshida says Final Fantasy 16 will focus on area-based design in a manner that sounds similar to Pokemon Legends Arceus, which was likewise assumed to be a pure open world game. I don't know how much of that is conjecture. They don't say that Yoshida says that. They say that that reminds them of the way that Arceus kind of played out. While Final Fantasy won't be a traditional open world game in itself, Yoshida does say it will take a lot of inspiration from AAA open world RPGs, though he doesn't name any specifics. We found in our extensive user research that many of the younger generations of gamer have never played a Final Fantasy or don't have any interest in the series. To create a game that might excite and resonate not only with our core fans, but also with that of a new generation, we played a lot of games ourselves. So yes, in Final Fantasy 16, you'll find inspiration from recent AAA open world RPGs. Trash side quests? Listen, I'll do them. I don't care. They won't be trash to me. Just make them have good stories. It will be okay. No, I'm sure they have, like, you know, secret caves off on the side and, like, again, things for you to travel back and do after you've progressed the story further. I'm sure he means aspects like that. However, to bring a story that feels like the span of an entire globe and beyond, we decided to avoid an open world design that limits us to a single open world space. Instead, focus on an independent area-based game design that can give players a better feel of a truly global scale. This is not a bad thing. I'd like to point a lot of people to Xenoblade Chronicles, a game that I've recently played the first one, and I played the second one a long time ago. Regardless of how I feel about those games do area-based design. They take you to an open area. There's usually tons of little objectives to do, some secrets to find, but as you're progressing through the story, you move from area to area to area. It's not one continuous thing without any load screens or anything like that. So I think that's a perfectly fine way of doing it, and we've seen that the scope of these areas is quite large, all things said. When you look at some of the pictures that they've shown, it still looks pretty big. It's big enough to make people think it will be open world, so I think that's going to work out pretty well. And I think it's probably for the better narrative-wise. Final Fantasy 15, listen, I actually like Final Fantasy 15, but the open world definitely detracts from the story. So doing it like this, probably the better way of going about it. Square Enix offered a better picture of the world in an update that went live last October when it introduced 16's 6 realms. Modeled after traditional European fantasy, with each nation having a dominant, a special person holds the power of an icon. And then this, I think, is just a lot of them going over, like, stuff, you know, they've gone over. Like, Square Enix's decision to avoid traditional open world games is surprising in light of current trends, but the fans will also recall that 15's open world was generally criticized. Yeah. So this is all conjecture here at the end. This isn't anything Yoshida specifically says. They just go over, you know, icons will be a part of battle and yada, yada, yada. Now, real quick, before I end the video, let me refresh IGN's page and see if they've posted anything else. They haven't yet. So I think I'm good to wrap this video up. And if while I'm rendering it, they post something, I'll record one more thing. Anyway, that's going to be a wrap for this interview session. There are quite a few other ones still to do. And given the length of these videos, probably a good idea that I split them up instead of doing one 40 to 50 minute video. But anyway, thanks for watching this. Again, stay tuned for everything Final Fantasy 16. Anything I can possibly post, I will. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, take care.